smaller windows.
They really are
emphasizing vertical instead of horizontal.
Right.
I mean, the opposite. They emphasized
really
horizontal rather than vertical. Excuse me.
Like the precursor to international style, mid-century modern.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, you could look at one of his house. I mean, out of Prairie School came Usonian.
Right.
And if you look at a Usonian house, it's like you think, oh, that's mid-century modern, even though it came a couple decades before.
Well, Usonians were in the 50s. So that was
okay.
truly, that was like the last iteration because Wright died in 59 and Usonians were
starting to
the last things that he did before.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I'll shut up now.
No. So prairie style buildings include strong geometry and massing, including large central chimneys, brick or stucco exterior, open asymmetrical floor plans, connected indoor and outdoor spaces, interior wood banding, restrained use of applied ornamentation, exploration of motifs, which is very Wrightian, one shape or plant form explored through furniture, wood carving, plaster art, glass, and other elements within a building. So what Wright would do is that he chose sort of an icon for his homes, and I can speak to more than one, but I know just because I was there recently that Aldbrass, which is the only plantation he ever designed, it's in Yamasee, South Carolina, which is about an hour from Charleston. It's between Charleston and Beaufort, and it has an icon that's like, it's supposed to be a canoe from the Yamasee the Native American tribe. And so it's, sort of horizontal with like these diagonal kind of cut in design. But he also uses, but that appears like cut out in wood in transoms. And it's just what you see on any identifying literature from Aldbrass, like stationery and cards and that sort of thing. But he uses that any of the places that he's done. So Taliesin has its own icon. I guess the Roby House does as well. I'm not sure if like the Unity Temple would, but anyway, it's interesting. It's sort of a little signature, and it is a nod to the culture of the building.
Okay.
So yeah.
So he's working on this, and in his private life, he's working on some rather other things. Frank was known as being a bit of a flirt, although he kind of, he enjoyed creating this eccentric persona. He had a signature way that he dressed, and it included wearing
a hat, right?
A wide brim hat and a red line cape, and he carried a cane. Which sounds more like a pimp daddy from the 70s to me. Yeah. Yes. He's Huggy Bear.
I think that Lou Kahn did that too. I mean, he was after the fact, but he did not have the hat, but I feel like the cape sounds familiar to me, but I may be mistaken.
And I'm sure Louis Kahn is going to show up in an eventual...
Lou Kahn.
Is it Lou? Mm-hmm. Okay. Lou Kahn. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Why is it Lou?
I don't know.
Huh.
That's how I learned it.
Oh, okay. Well, he had an interesting life. That is plenty scandalous, so we'll get to him later.
He did. He did.
So things got really scandalous beginning in 1903. Now, Wright was engaged to design a house for Edwin Cheney, who was an electrical engineer living in Oak Park. Ironically, he was hired because Edwin's wife, Martha, had met Frank's wife, Kitty, at a social club. So
wait, his what?
So Edwin's wife, Martha, met Frank's wife, Kitty.
Oh, so the wives met each other.
Right.
Okay.
And Kitty, God love her, was apparently quite a booster for Frank. So she was,
Oh, so she's talking him up to the other guy's wife.
Right.
That's funny.
And so that's how he got hired. So during the construction of the home, however, Frank and Martha, who was known as Mama, became quite close. Now, Mama was 34, very attractive, but more importantly, she was actually very intelligent in her own right. She'd married Edwin Cheney when she was 29, so kind of late for that time period. But prior to her marriage, she graduated from the University of Michigan. So once again, something very avant-garde.
Oh, women, it was not common for them to...
Yeah, I mean, it was becoming more and more.
Okay.
But it wasn't usual, Before she married, she worked as a librarian and lived on her own, was an independent woman, so she really espoused early feminist ideals and was a bit of a free thinker. So she and Frank fell in love. And even though the house was completed in 1904, they were frequently seen together. Frank liked flashy cars, of course, so they would take rides together, which was totally scandalous. You just were not supposed to be seen with a married woman.
Yeah.
Even though this apparently was not Frank's first indiscretion, his wife Kitty refused to think about divorce. She thought...
What do you mean it wasn't? Oh, we just don't know who the other ones were. But there were more.
Such a flirt that he probably had other affairs.
Okay.
And so she kind of expected for things to cool off and that he would come back to her, so to speak. Finally, in 1909, so 5 years after this house had been completed, Mama left her husband and her 2 children for Europe. Now, a couple years later,
so she just
took off and left. Yeah.
Oh.
So a couple years later, the Cincinnati Enquirer related this story. Quote, early in 1909, Mrs. Cheney went to Colorado on a visit, taking her children with her. She wrote to her husband, bidding him to come and get the children. When he reached Colorado, she had gone and left the children.
Where?
In Colorado.
Did she have family or something?
I don't know. It just sounds like they went on vacation and she was like, oh, going to take off for Europe. Come get the kids. So on Edwin Cheney's return to Oak Park, he learned that Wright had gone away as well. The truth soon came out, and Oak Park was amazed to learn that Wright and Mrs. Cheney had sailed for Europe. There was no explanation offered for their unconventional action.
Oh, he went with her?
Yep. Mrs. Wright maintained a dignified silence, refusing to discuss the affair beyond expressing her complete confidence in her husband. Eventually, more details began to leak out, and Kitty finally said, quote, I do not blame my husband. He is innocent as any babe. He is a good man and could not conceive of anything wrong. He is not himself now and will come back and be happy again. He is under a strange influence. Midlife crisis for 200, Alex?
Are we family friendly? Because there's a funny thing that's said in our office about
No, go for
client couples. There's like an acronym, but it's something about under the influence of pussy.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Which is really silly. But but usually it's like the wife making decisions
and the husband.
It's not right, but it's
pretty
funny.
much every House Hunters episode ever on the face of the planet.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll always go, the husband really likes vintage houses. Oh, the wife says, I really need a new house. They buy a new house. So Frank stayed abroad for several months. He published 2 volumes of his designs through a German publisher and set up a house in Florence, Italy. And his oldest son, Lloyd, came to live with him. And then later on, he was traced to Fiesole, Italy, where Mama was living.
Oh, the son came over?
Yeah, his son lived with them for a while.
Abroad.
Yeah. So eventually, Frank turned up in the States again, and it was reported in the local papers that a wall was constructed down the middle of his Oak Park house so that he could live on one side and Kitty could live on the other.
Wait, why did she let that happen?
That's a good question.
She was the one, supporting him even after
she was.
She knew what had happened.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I guess she was just trying to save face. I mean, money. I don't know how well he was doing. I mean, it sounds like he was doing pretty brisk business. So
sure.
I actually looked at the architectural plans for the house, and there was no wall constructed, but in 1911, a new wing was created upstairs. And
wait, in the studio?
Yeah.
Oh, so it wasn't true there was a wall.
Yeah, did not see any evidence of that.
Oh.
He added on to the home in 1898, or I should say that when he originally added on to the home in 1898, there was a, quote, master bedroom. But in 1911, when he added a new wing upstairs, there were 4 bedrooms for the remaining children in the house and a separate bedroom that was labeled, quote, Mrs. Wright's bedroom. And then clear across the house, there was another wing added with 2 bedrooms, a bath, and a sitting room and a kitchen. Mm-hmm. So, coincidence? I think not. That was his bachelor pad. Mm-hmm. So, Maima's husband eventually filed for divorce based on her desertion of their marital home, as they said back then. The petition was granted. So, Maima took back her maiden name of Borthwick following the divorce.
Yeah.
She was MIA for a while, and Frank claimed in the papers that he didn't know where she was. But then about 6 months after his return to Chicago and her divorce, he turned up in Spring Green, Wisconsin, where he had been building a bungalow on the land that his mother's family had settled in the early 19th century. And who happened to be there with him? Maima
Cheney.
Yep.
Maima Borthwick, sorry.
That's right. So all along, Frank had been building this little escape plan because Kitty Wright refused to divorce him, and he wanted to be with Maima. Once again, God love her, she continued to believe that he would eventually return to her. Meanwhile, the house, which Wright named Taliesin, was completed.
So Taliesin is more than just a Midwestern country house.
It's a love shack.
It's sure. And I'm not going to start singing, although that's what the pause is for. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to sing. There's a home. So there's Taliesin, the home. There's a studio. There's a school. And these buildings are all on an 800 picturesque acres in Spring Green, Wisconsin, in the southwest part of the state. And Spring Green was where he was born, or somebody, we already mentioned Spring Green, and now I don't remember.
That was where they moved back to following his dad's disastrous stint in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. So it
was where his mom's family was from.
Okay. So I guess maybe that's another reason he went there, because he was so close to his mom, and his beautiful country there, I suppose. And there were ties. There were lots of what?
Cows.
There were cows.
And cheese.
Our cows. The property lies in the Helena Valley, and its landscape reminded Frank Lloyd Wright's Welsh grandparents of their native countryside. So that would have been his maternal grandparents, and they had settled there because it looked like Wales, interestingly.
Huh.
Taliesin was named that in honor of a 6th century Welsh poet and bard. The name is derived from tal, meaning brow, and essen, meaning shining. Therefore, it is translated as shining brow.
So big forehead.
Sweaty forehead.
Big sweaty forehead.
But if there's one person that you know from architecture, chances are it's Frank Lloyd Wright. We've already talked about his Oak Park home and studio and touched on a few of the buildings in and around Chicago that he designed. But for sure, even if you're not an architect or a preservationist, surely you know Frank Lloyd Wright from his Guggenheim. That was, maybe you've built it in Legos, because they do that. And I have seen his buildings maybe just on TV or in pictures, and seen, maybe if you're a little bit more nerdy like us, you've watched the Ken Burns documentary on PBS, accidentally or intentionally, about Frank Lloyd Wright, or even maybe been to Oak Park yourself. So his personal life, as you will find out, thanks to Caroline, was definitely messier than his very composed architecture. And I guess we've already sort of seen the result of his, I don't know, bad decisions, interesting life choices.
In this case, I would say that it was a good life decision, because it resulted in Taliesin no matter
That's
what
true.
the impetus to
That's
it was.
That's true.
Good architectural decision, bad life decision.
But so at the time that construction